Good evening, everybody. And
Yeah,
stopped raining here.
it was
It was
raining
raining there. Nice weather out
this
this
morning.
morning.
Anyway,
Good
I
evening. I'm good, thank you.
I hear it from you about your book.
Out today. It's come out today. So, yeah, we're all very excited because this is a collaboration. I've written 3 other books, but this particular one is a really valuable collaboration between 6 people who work with people who are getting divorced. So we set up we started off in a group that was being supportive and offering help and advice, and then it went on to Facebook and became a group on Facebook where we were inviting people in to come in and ask questions, and then that has evolved into your divorce handbook. It's what you do next that counts. So it's your divorce handbook, it's what you do next that counts, and it's a kind of support thing, all the questions you might want to know answers to when you're at the most vulnerable time in your life, which indeed is that point in time when you realise your relationship's collapsing and you're going to be heading down the divorce route. So that's where it all evolved from.
Why was it written?
Why it was written was because in the beginning there was a setup, a group called Smart Divorce, and Smart Divorce was set up by a lady called Tamsin Kane, who's a financial planner, and she, through the work that she did, often working with people, lots of different parts of life that we need financial planning in, but she found she was working a lot with divorcing people and their finances were in a mess or in a state of uncertainty. They didn't know how much money they needed or budgeting, and through all of that she made relationships with family lawyers, mediators, people who arranged mortgages, all those sorts of people, and realised that a support group on Facebook where people could go and ask questions and know it was a safe space, that was set up. And then through that, the sort of hardcore 6 of us were having a conversation, and it came about that the idea was floated that we pull together and write a handbook for people with all the things that they need to know at that point in time. So it's a book that you can dip into whichever sections are relevant for you today, what you might need to know, what you might need to prepare for, and it just kind of gives away a lot of advice or a lot of support at times when people are feeling vulnerable, and that's really why it was written in the very first place.
Yeah. And
So it's out today.
I beg your pardon? It's out today.
Yeah.
Is it out on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon today, and it has its own website, and you can get it on my website, lifestyletherapy.net, as well, Susan Lee, lifestyletherapy.net. So it's available in lots of different places, but you know, it's not necessarily a book you would want to read from beginning to end. And we all realise that people go through different stages when their relationships are breaking down. It's a very vulnerable time in life. I mean, nobody gets married expecting to get divorced. And so I know one of the questions you were floating earlier was, why do people get divorced? Well, gradually over time, that often young couple, sort of maybe grow apart. We realise that we got together and we may have been quite young, we might have been at university, we might have known each other all our lives, or it could even be a later life relationship where we're perhaps on our second marriage, but it may be that we look at each other after a period of time and realise that we don't necessarily know each other. And the truth is, you often find 2 people are in a very different place where their opinions of their relationship may not necessarily converge. So it may be that one person thinks the relationship is okay or even great, and the other says, it's gone too far, I don't want to retrieve it, or I don't love you anymore. And so those situations all need a little bit of gentle support for both of them to help them decide what the next steps are going to be. And again, a book like this, because it's called It's What You Do Next That Counts, that's a subtitle, it is crucial, really. What are you going to do next? How are you going to plan those next stages? And that's again part of what's covered in the book.
Okay. What is
What
the
is the
most
most
common
common
reason for
reason for
divorce?
divorce?
Reasons. Well, there can be lots of reasons why people get divorced. As I say, it can be that they've grown apart. It can be that they look at each other and realise they never even knew each other in the beginning. It may be that the relationship over time, but often you find if there's kids or setting up a business or really focusing on your career or even health issues or, extra family relationships, that people gradually get so busy with living their lives and coping with the day-to-day that they may realise that when they actually stand still and look at each other, they don't know each other, that maybe even don't like each other anymore. And the truth is, and it's a tough acceptance, that sometimes we have to accept that not every relationship stays in our life forever. A lot of people look at the people they were really good friends with at school or in their first jobs or at different stages at university throughout their lives and realise that one's gone this way and the other's gone that way. And that's absolutely fine. It's just that we don't have similar interests or similar conversations or similar outlooks on life even. And so sometimes that can work and it can be an interesting trigger, an interesting dynamic in that relationship. But other times we look at each other and say, actually, for each of us to do well and thrive in our lives, we maybe need to separate and divorce. And sometimes that can be straightforward, but a lot of times there's a lot of stuff needs sorting out. Finances, the house, what your next steps are going to be, are you going to earn money, where you're going to live. All those things need sorting out, and those messy things can sometimes compel us to stay where we are when really we should be thinking about moving on. And so, again, sometimes we need advice or help or support or just a bit of information about what might be involved as to our next steps.
What are
What
the
are the first signs of divorce?
What are the first what, sorry?
signs
Signs
of
of
divorce?
divorce.
I suppose there can be lots of different things. There can be arguing, of course, bickering, it can be boredom, can be lack of interest in intimacy and closeness. There can be spending time dreading going home, increasingly staying late at work, increasingly doing things away from the home. And again, sometimes those things are okay and they're not a sign that there's anything wrong, but often it can be that some relationships, for example, one partner is away all week and the other's at home looking after the family or running a career as well as looking after the family in the home. And for some people that's great. Weekends are a grand reunion. But other times people get fed up because somebody's coming home on a Friday night and wants to crash at home and perhaps relax, and the other's saying let's go out and have meals and do things together and catch up with friends and family. So again, it's how we handle things. And I suppose when we find we're not communicating anymore, we're not sharing how we're feeling, we have things that we can't be bothered to talk about, we're not particularly interested in the family or what's going on at home, and we've lost interest in each other, those can be signs that the relationship is fragmenting. And sometimes relationship counselling can help and help people say, actually, fundamentally, we do care about each other a lot, but we've just lost the connectivity and we're struggling a bit with each other. And sometimes that can be retrieved with a bit of effort on both sides, but other times it may have gone too far. So each situation is individual and independent and depends what each person wants from the relationship and what each person is prepared to commit to try and rescue it if that's possible.
Trouble
Is that
there's a
there's a lot of young people get married
and they
and they don't know what it's
all
all about really. They rush into it.
They go to
They go to the restaurant,
get
get married,
and they
and they think they've got plenty of sticks on your head, or
you know what
I mean? Not really about marriage, is it?
Well, I think the option is for a lot of people now they live together first, and so a lot of people almost do their probationary period or their apprenticeship and live together before they get married, and that can be a good thing, where we discover what it's like to actually live with another person and have to accommodate them. Because if you've got, as you say, a young person, if they've gone from living at home and just pleasing themselves and not really doing very much in the home. They don't know how to turn the oven on or the washing machine or whatever it might be. And then they go straight to uni and maybe live in a squat or just live very carelessly at uni or do whatever they do. Or go from home to a job and then to get married. It can be a tough role of transition to learn about living with another person and to actually have to respect that person. So that in itself can be a lesson in itself. And that's indeed, you know, and again, some people can live the dream and they're playing at house for the first 2 or 3 years and it can be great fun. But then if children come along or if work situations get difficult or one person doesn't like the job and wants to finish and perhaps there's no income coming in or there's health situations or just general growing apart, all of those things can be possibly worked through. But if they can't be worked through, then there comes a point where there has to be a conversation or indeed one person just says, actually, I want my life back. I want to live a different kind of life than the one I'm living now. And so it just depends what's going on and where people are at. And some people stay in a relationship because there are children and they think, I don't want to upset them all, and what will people think, and how's that going to impact on the finances? Sorry? I beg your pardon?
Well, if you were saying about some people, you know, kind of like stay in the relationship just for the kids, you know, and for now. But I'm asking, do they really have to stay?
Well, again, I suppose that depends, because some people really don't want to upset the kids, but actually children are not stupid, and they know that if the atmosphere is bad at home, they know if the room goes quiet when they walk in and mummy and daddy were arguing before and then they shut up as they hear the door open, or they know that there's tension when one person returns home from work, or that the dynamics have changed, because we've talked before about so much of communication is done non-verbally. So if there's sort of bitching or snapping or undercurrents or tensions, then sometimes children will almost feel relieved if mum and dad say they're separating. But you know, sometimes people stay together because they think, well, actually the implications of us splitting up might mean we have to sell the house because we both need a place to live, and two people needing accommodating and you're only paying for one home at the minute can be an impact that a lot of people can't sustain just easily. There has to be, you know, sometimes one person will say, I'll buy you out, but that's not always feasible or viable. Plus, school might need to change. Plus, children might be concerned about losing their friends, their social circle, their peer group. So it depends what's involved as a consequence of a divorce, a family divorce. And so at the end, and how it happens, you know, telling the children together, telling them in a positive, supportive way is very important. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes children are used almost as a battering ram, where one parent, or in fact both parents, insist on telling the children far more than they need to know, and sometimes even details of what's actually gone on and gone wrong, you know. So again, again, every situation is unique in its own right. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's better for parents to split and allow a new normal to sort of grow and evolve. But often, so long as kids are kept in reasonably similar environments, so maybe they do stay with their school, maybe they do stay in the same area, maybe there are grandparents or relatives, relations nearby who can be supportive and offer them some sort of comfort and a place to go and talk and feel normal and share their concerns. If they've got that kind of support network around them, children are pretty resilient. And so long as they're not involved in too much of the detritus of their parents' relationship collapsing, they can usually be fairly resilient and survive. But sometimes parents like to stay until they're old. The children are old, until the children leave school. They're 15, 16, 18 years of age. And sometimes they want to see them through that. and not disrupt their lives too much.
In the booklet, does it got any worksheets you can go through?
Does it have any what, sorry?
Worksheets you can go through?
No, it's not got worksheets, but it has got bullet points. There's lots of bullet points, and there's takeaways at the end of every chapter, and there's a sort of like a nice quote, a thought for the day at the beginning of each chapter. So, and the index is so comprehensive that you can actually look through it and see which parts are going to be the most beneficial for you today. So, for example, the legal side has got explaining various forms that might need to be filled in. The finances are think about things that you don't want to forget about thinking about, like pensions and how much money do you need, and what about sorting out debts and budgeting and all that kind of thing. The mortgage side, what's a good time to get a mortgage and what needs to happen, and will you be able to afford one? And my side, the well-being side, is that whole thing about understanding how you feel beforehand, the grief process that you might be going through, the devastation that you might be feeling, the fact that it's normal, and ways to support yourself through that, ways to look after the children. And then at the end, I write the final chapter too, talking about moving forward and perhaps thinking about starting to date again, and looking forward to building a new life, and maybe taking stepping stones if that's relevant for you, and how to do that. So we've covered the sort of before, during and after in a very comprehensive way. So there's lots of bullet points, very useful index for you to find what you need, and the sort of takeaways and thoughts that will go through that and help support you.
It seems like a handy book, really. You can just kind of open it up and look at it. I don't know, find that page, you've got it there.
Well, that was exactly our intention, because we know that a lot of people are needing to get divorced, really in a state where they're just ready and it's important for them to do so, but they're really concerned about what's the next step. What do I do next? Where do I go? What happens if I go to a lawyer? Would I benefit from seeing a mediator? What is the role of a mediator? What's the point of one, if you like? And then what sort of things do I need if I'm going to a lawyer? What time's a good time to go? What sort of paperwork will I be needing? And planning for your finances and planning to get a mortgage. So all these are areas that are quite unnerving at the most vulnerable time in your life, where you're thinking, you've been battered and bruised. Your relationship that you thought was going to be with you forever is collapsing around your ears. And at that very point in time, you're needing to be on your toes and be thinking about what you need to do. And so we wrote that exactly with that point in mind, that it would be a good guide to help you feel clear about what you needed to do next, and to help you with the stepping stones, and just to give people a bit of guidance and support and confidence in what they need to do. And it's a good way to help you move forward.
Certainly is.
Yeah, for sure.
With divorce, when you're going through divorce, it can be really hard time. Because I've been through it. So what do you think from there now for a divorce?
What do people what, sorry?
What would you say to people who's going through a divorce? Who's finding it
what I would say to people who are getting ready to get divorced or feeling they need to is to really think about good self-care, and really think about taking your time over things. And also that whole thing about being supported by friends and family. So taking your time, not allowing yourself to be rushed into taking steps. It's not necessary to move out and literally go and rent or buy somewhere. Maybe if it feels better for you, take time and do a house share with friends or family, or save a bit of money, or be around people who are supportive of you. I think it's important to have a good support group in terms of people who will listen to you, but take it steady with advice, because it's often that people will give you good advice, but if they were in the same position, they wouldn't necessarily follow what they're telling you to do. So step back and think about, is this advice right? And is it right for me? And is this the right time for me? And I think the whole thing also about just being gentle with yourself, making sure that you cry and laugh and understand the process, the emotional process of upheaval that often go through when we are getting divorced, the highs and the lows, the grief, the sorrow, the regrets, the guilt, anger perhaps. All these things are a natural cycle of grieving for a relationship that we expected to last and hasn't done. So all those things, good self-care, taking care to eat healthily, look after yourself, beware of how much you drink, and follow good advice, but make sure it's right for you, and allow yourself to take things in your own time, in your own way that suits you best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you show us a book again, please? And where can they find you?
It's on Amazon, and it's on my website, lifestyletherapy.net. So both those places it's available to get.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Sometimes when we go
through
through
divorce,
it
it
can
can
be
be
a
a
hard
hard
time for
for
everyone.
everyone.
Do we
Do
stick
we stick
together?
together?
Or do
Or
we
do we
just
just
move
move
on?
on?
It's
It's
difficult,
difficult,
isn't
isn't
it?
it?
When you've
When you've
got
got
children,
children,
you're
you're
thinking
thinking
that
that
children
children
need
need
both
both
parents.
parents.
And if
And
one
if one
leaves
leaves
and one
and one
stays,
stays,
really
really it's a
lot.
lot.
But
But
if
if
it
it
was
was
to
to
happen,
happen,
what you've
what
got
you've
to
got to
think
think
about
about
is
is this.
you
You
should
should
try.
try.
Look after
Look
your
after your
family.
family.
Goodbye for
Goodbye
now.
now.